And I'm going to continue work on this here Arbites. And what I'm doing now is I'm putting on, or trying to, I'm putting on a 50-50 mix of dryad bark and mournfang brown onto the leather. Now I'm going to start it at the edge, but you'll notice I'm not doing the typical chunky highlight. I want it to have a textured look, like it's, kind of worn and wrinkled. I'm also just going to fill in the areas in the middle with this also, just all over like that. Now because it's a 50-50 mix of the two colors, it's not going to build up super quick. And then I'll do several iterations of the same thing, just pulling back each time with lighter and lighter colors. The theory being that it'll make it look like I know what I'm doing. This is something, I can't remember the creator I saw doing this, but somebody demonstrated it recently. I think it was in an Instagram video that they did this way, and I just thought it looked pretty good. So let me get that done. I'm using a Rosemary & Co. size 1 series 99 to do this. I really like these brushes. All right, now I'm going to do the same type of thing with just straight mournfang brown. I'm going to be a little more deliberate about adding scratchiness to the texture. As I'm pulling from the inside of the holster to the edge, I'm not necessarily trying to cover every place, but just giving some scratches like that. I can do the same thing in here. It's almost like leather chipping, I guess you'd say. Like that. I think I forgot to mention in the previous scene, and it's the same way in this one, the paint's thinned about 50-50 with water. Not being precise about it. It's more of a, I'll know it when I see it kind of look. I just want it to flow easily and not leave any actual visceral texture. Just want it to be thin enough to cover. Now I'm going to jump up to XV88, which is a lighter brown color. And I'm just going to stipple in some edge highlighting, leaving it a little bit choppy and patchy. Doesn't have to be completely a solid line. And then I'll also come in here and, like, along the edge up here, just get that in there. You can see where I squished my brush against it. That's the depth perception problem that I run into with using both reading glasses and an optivisor, just so I can see. Sometimes I think the brush is not quite there, and all of a sudden, bam, I'm right up on it. And other times I'll be twitching my hand along trying to do some stippling or something and realize that I'm still a 1/4 of an inch away from the model. So I just keep working with it. I'll just go around and add this in. Just really try to make those edges pop out and finish off the texture for the leather. Now there's lots of little silver parts all over the model. There's a few big ones too. I'm going to go over all of these with known oil to start bringing out the shapes. I'm going to go back in and highlight some stuff, but I want a pretty heavy coat of known oil to introduce some shadows and just to tone down that bright silvery look. Gotta make sure I get the big chicken on his head. Who are you calling a chicken head? I even put it on these smaller details. Even if there's not a lot of texture or shape to the sculpt, even if it's just a fairly smooth piece. Because again, this is as much providing shadow as it is kind of toning down that bright silver. Now I'm going to use mithril blade from 2 thin coats, and I'm going to very, very carefully paint in the edges of the armor and brighten up this this eagle and fist emblem here and things like that. Just painting the edges, and like on these feathers, I'm just going to try and hit the very edges and the outer tips of the feathers just a little bit, just to brighten those up. This is really crazy difficult for me with my optivisor on, trying to see what I'm doing, because it's such a weird optical illusion that I see. So anyway, I didn't thin the paint. I want it to be fairly, it's already somewhat thin out of the bottle, but I didn't want it to be runny. I want it to sit exactly where I place it, rather than flowing too much. So it means I have to go back to the palette a lot, but I'd rather do that than have it flowing all over the place, which is more difficult to control. Now I want to drop some Gilliman Flesh contrast paint here onto the skin. Looks like I may need a little more than that. And what I'm hoping to be able to do is that this contrast paint will do its contrast paint thing, and that I can look at this and go, yeah, that's good enough. I'm not going to mess with it anymore. But we'll see. This is where the impatience comes in. Tired of playing around. You get a big blob of Gilliman Flesh right there, dude. Whatever it is you're singing, you just went. I'll let that dry and see what I think of it. Now, why these guys run around with a bright red gun, I have no idea. But I'm going to go with it. And I'm going to give it just some edge highlights. This is Mephiston red, just to kind of help the shape of it stand out a little bit. I could probably, if I were watching an actual painter doing this, they would probably use like, 2 or 3 more colors to highlight this thing, to edge highlight it. But like that great philosopher said, Clint Eastwood, in one of the Dirty Harry movies, a man's got to know his limitations. Apparently one of my limitations is keeping everything on camera. Alright, I think I'm at the point in the build that I'm ready to put this guy together and begin looking at it and seeing if there's any little touches I want to add. As with any model, there's always something you can do if you want to keep going down the rabbit hole. But I think if I get them together, I can get a better evaluation of, am I happy with how it looks, or do I want to do some other stuff? I really like how the holster turned out. I thought that was pretty good. So let me get him all assembled and then take a look at it. Well, I'm thinking he's mostly done. I just realized that I didn't paint in the little visor there. I'm not sure what color I'm going to paint that. I'm still thinking about it. Probably need to put some paint in there. Might need to touch up. I'd put some of that Gilliman flesh, the contrast paint that I'd used on his flesh. I used this here on his participation ribbons. And I may go in and touch them up with a little bit of a lighter color on the flat areas. I'm thinking this may work. I probably need to put a wash on this eagle here too, just to give it a little bit of contrast. So let me touch those up. I want to put some Vallejo cold white right there in that visor. But the only way I can do it is to get it right up to my face. So I'm going to have to do this off camera, but just trust me, I'm going to use this size 1 series 99 from Rosemary & Co. And I'm going to try and very carefully put it in there if my hands won't shake too much and I can actually focus on what I'm doing. All right, I got that in there without too much in the way of errors. I'd already done that one on the shield. Now, what I do sometimes if I have to paint into a tight area like that, and I mean, I can always go back and clean it up if I mess it up, but I'd prefer not to have to do that. So a lot of times what I do, even if the brush is a very fine-tipped brush, and this is a very pointy brush. Here, let me, if you do like I do, I reestablish the tip on a brush by just putting it in my mouth and then pulling it back out. It gives you a nice tip there. But what you can do is take your fingers, just gently do it like that, and notice that it gives you got that side that's wider, and then you've got a very, very flat edge. So what I can do is I thin the paint down with water, not quite to a wash consistency, but where all I had to do was take that narrow edge and touch it in there, and it just flowed where I wanted to. And then if you need to, you dry it, do it one more time. So you kind of use the features of the model, the surface features of the model, to help you get the paint placed in there. And then I can just take that brush and pop it right back in my mouth and get a nice round tip on it. But this way, it just makes it easier. So let me figure out what paint I want to put in there on top of that now, so that it'll be kind of bright, and see where we're going to go from there. All right, well, I think I'm going to call him done. I mean, yeah, I could, go further on it. But I'm ready to move on to something else. And I'm not unhappy with it. It's a really cool sculpt. I think the biggest thing I've learned from this is that shading black armor is really hard. Highlighting it and not making it look like something that's black that's been outlined in blue, which is pretty much what I ended up with. It's been good in terms of learning more about painting minis and how I can paint minis. As I've talked about, there's the hand shake, the tremors and twitches. It's nothing bad, but it's just always kind of there. And then of course my eyesight, which is always something I have to factor in. I did learn that I think if I want to paint this style, then I think it's probably best if I go with at most 2 highlights, a chunky highlight and then an edge highlight.
Trying to go beyond that, I've just realized physically is just beyond, it's beyond my capabilities and right now. And quite honestly, I don't have the patience to put in the time that it would take to get that within my abilities. I've learned that pretty much you can do anything in this hobby you want. You just got to keep practicing it. And I just realized I like building vehicles best. And I would love to be a really good figure painter. I absolutely don't have the desire to put in the time that it would take to do so. But I want to try some other methods for black. I've watched several things that Richard Gray has done, and he's done less of the heavy metal style. If you've ever watched Richard Gray, he does a different style, a lot more stippling, a lot more light volumes, things like that. This was inspired by watching Dave Perryman, who was part of the heavy metal paint team, and he paints in that style. So I think the next time I try black or anything, in fact, the next figure I paint, where I'm trying to, treat it as a learning experience, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in a Richard Gray kind of style. I've already done a few like that, but I think for my patience level, my physical limitations, and really my skill level, is not that Richard Gray is not skilled. He's extremely skilled, multiple Slayer Sword winner. But his method is very approachable in terms of being a little more forgiving if your skill set isn't quite there. And yet he can use that very, very skill set that he demonstrates to do magnificent work that wins Golden Demon Awards and Slayer Swords. So I like that, but I'm not unhappy with it. A couple of things I did off camera. I put some Ethermatic, is that what it's called? Ethermatic blue contrast paint into the visor. And then I just put a drop of gloss in there and just let that spread around. Put a little drop of gloss on the various little the little camera light things on him, whatever they're called, just to make them a little bit shiny. And drop some Noan oil in there. Looks a little dirty, but that's okay. Like I said, I could do more, but I'm ready to move on to the next project. So I will call this end video. Now, finally, just kind of a follow-up to a recent video, as long as I'm rambling. I've been working on this Orky jet. I put in just a few little extra panels and some rivets, just random places around the model, to kind of break up some of the open area surfaces around it. And all I did was just use some very thin plastic card and cut those shapes out, glued them on there so they'd be flush. And then I took some styrene rod that was, that circumference, and just cut very thin slices of it, glued it on. And then once it was solidly in place, I just took a metal file and just kind of gently rubbed it over the top to just smooth out the edges of the rivets. So now it's got, some plates riveted on there, some wires hanging loose in a few areas. And so I think it's looking a little more orky. And I think I'm going to try to get this primed because I'm still working on the tank, the Rogel Dorn tank, doing the final parts of the video for weathering that. But I just thought this was a nice little touch. I didn't want to overdo it, but I thought it was a nice little touch. But anyway, thanks for putting up with me painting the. I think the proper pronunciation is Arbites, Arbites. I don't know. It's much more fun to call it Arbites. It's an Arbites. So if you don't remember that reference, look up Wilford Brimley, and you do a YouTube lookup on Wilford Brimley diabetes commercial. He's this guy, does commercials about diabetes medicines, and I'm a diabetic. So if you say you shouldn't make fun of diabetics, I'm a diabetic. Okay, so let's just not worry about that. But he didn't say diabetes. He said diabetes. Diabetes. So when I saw this was called an arbites, or however you say it, all I could hear was him going arbites. So anyway, weird sense of humor. Anyway, I'll call this video. I'm going to stick this one up on the shelf. Most of my models I sell. I don't sell the figures because, frankly, who would buy them? I just like having little painted soldiers on my shelf. I don't keep most of my models, but having some little painted soldiers on the shelf is kind of cool. So I like doing that. But thanks for being a patron. Thanks for putting up with me painting something like this rather poorly. But I had fun with it. I really did. And I learned from it. It helped me learn some things about painting black and different styles and stuff like that. Continued to learn about that. So I'm real happy. It reinforced my love for Rosemary & Co. brushes. I used mostly the Series 99 on this. I used some Series 33 brushes that I've got, but I stuck mostly with the Series 99, and I'm really happy with those. And one of the reasons I'm really happy with them is, one, they're really good, and two, they're really affordable. Even ordering them from the UK, they're just super affordable. I mean, I love other brushes. There's some that are really good, but man, when you pay $15, $20 for a brush, I feel like I shouldn't even be using it. But when you get those Series 99 brushes, they're very affordable, $5, $6, and I don't see a whole lot of difference between them and the Series 33 that I use and the Artist Opus brushes that I have. So don't see really any difference. They're very durable, and I really like them. So that's one thing that I just kind of reinforced is I'm sold on those Series 99 brushes. So give them a try if you're looking for a natural hair brush to use. But anyway, thank you for being a patron. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for your encouragement. And as always, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. I thought I was going to say something else, and it just slipped my mind. Oh, well, I guess I need a nap. All right. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.